Hopefully, if they've had been working with us, I include both spouses in throughout the process. We only work with clients if they're married. Both spouses have to be at the initial meetings. It's that important.
Hello, this is Mark Silverman, managing member and founder of Silverman & Associates, and I'm also a certified financial planner professional. I want to welcome you to the Saving with Silverman podcast. I'm glad you're here. Each week, we'll discuss different financial planning topics because making smarter choices about your money impacts the quality of your life.
Let's talk about one of the sad parts of your job. I know that you end up talking with a lot of people who are in an emotional state, and oftentimes that's because of the death of a spouse. When a new client comes to you, whether it's a man or a woman, right after losing their spouse, what are they typically most concerned about?
Well, that's one of the tougher things. It's certainly, I got in this business to help people, and this is certainly when our clients need us the most. And it's certainly devastating for the spouse as well as, it's not easy for anybody when they lose their life partner. So it really depends, a lot of times, and unfortunately, if you look, most of the time this happens, we usually have the wife that comes to us because they lost their husband. And if you look, most women outlive men. That's just the way it is. In my client base, if you look, I have more widowed women than I do men, certainly. Hopefully, if they had been working with us, I include both spouses in throughout the process. We only work with clients if they're married. Both spouses have to be at the initial meetings. It's that important for that reason. But a lot of times, unfortunately, if they've been working with a previous advisor, a lot of times the advisor didn't really seem to get the wife involved. The husband didn't get the wife involved, which is unfortunate, especially if the advisor didn't request that, because of the fact that a lot of times spouses are left out in the cold and don't really even understand or even know what questions to even ask. So it's important that they understand what they have and that they're given the right advice and understand what their solutions are and what can be done. I've seen a lot of unfortunate things where we've had spouses come to us where they've already met with somebody else, and maybe that person's already put them into some type of products that they really, truly don't need, and that's not going to benefit them, where they're sold some type of high commission product that they're locked into without them really knowing. They're given part of the story and not the full story. So it's important that we spend time with them and really give them the knowledge and not rush them into a decision. A lot of decisions need to be made, but some don't need to be made right away. So it's important that they have the time to digest what their situation looks like and make an informed decision on what the next action needs to be taken.
I know that you always say it's not a good time to make a decision when you're in a very emotional state. You need to give it a little time. And when one spouse dies, what are the immediate challenges that the remaining spouse is left to deal with?
Well, they've got to understand where the money's coming in, what the income's coming in, because they might have bills. Maybe they have a mortgage, maybe they don't, but they certainly have, utilities. They may have car payments. They may have, expenses that come up, and I've seen cases where we have a spouse that doesn't even know how to write a check. And that's unfortunate. It's great that the husband took care of all those things, but it's not great that the husband didn't include them and say, if something happens to me, this is what we need to do, or here's the person that you need to call, etc. That's why it's so important when we start a new relationship with a couple that we have both of them come in and that both feel comfortable asking questions and that they understand what's going on. Doesn't mean they need to be an expert, but understanding what's going on is so important. As far as immediate challenges are, what needs to be decided today, what can wait till another day, and really sorting that information out while they're going through grievance and that sort of thing.
You may have a situation where you're talking about a great reduction in income and maybe, at least Social Security and maybe a pension as well. I know that's a major concern for folks, and you can help them through that.
Yeah, so if you're both receiving Social Security, one receives half of the other one's benefit if their benefit's not greater. If one spouse dies, you're going to lose that other Social Security. So yes, you may get the higher amount that the other spouse was receiving, but you lose your benefit. So there is a reduction in Social Security. Depending on how that pension was set up, unfortunately, some people, when they choose the pension benefit, they take the highest amount, which is typically just 100% on the person who was working for that company, and they don't select any survivor benefits. That income is gone, and that can't be changed either. So that's another big issue that we sometimes see. Looking at tax rates now that they're a single versus joint, that could affect things as well.
Right.
Looking at their estate plan and maybe coordinating, if things were set up correctly, maybe coordinating with their attorney and making sure that we're all on the same page and doing what's in their best interest. If they have life insurance, whether we help them with that policy or not, we can certainly try to help them file the right forms to make sure that they get their benefits and their claims done properly. And then looking at other financial matters. Are the assets allocated properly? Maybe now that your situation's changed, maybe you want the portfolio to be a little bit more conservative. Maybe you want it more aggressive. Maybe you need more income off that portfolio now that Social Security or that pension's now gone. So looking at those sorts of things and making sure that we're giving the right advice and not making any rash decisions based on emotion, because as we know, it's in a very emotional time for everybody.
Well, certainly a lot of that is enveloped in sadness because, someone has lost a life partner, as you mentioned a moment ago. And I know that you've dealt with a lot of situations like this over all the time that you've been doing this. Tell us a story, if you would, about a widowed spouse who is left in a difficult financial position because of poor planning.
I would reference the time that we had somebody that came to us. They weren't working with us as a couple, but they reached out to us after her husband had passed away, and she didn't even know how to write a check. Mm-hmm. I mean, she had been interviewing different advisors. One advisor was, I use the term advisor loosely, was a financial salesperson, was trying to sell her a bunch of annuities, and she had plenty of income in her case. So the annuities didn't make any sense. She didn't need to tie up her money. She just needed help with how to get the bills paid, where her money was at, how things were set up, changing her estate plan to reflect the new changes, maybe some beneficiaries that I think needed to be updated and that sort of thing. So that, they did have the estate plan in shape, but she didn't even know how to write checks or who money was owed to, how much money they were spending, where the bank accounts were. So we helped her consolidate everything and get her on the right track so we could simplify that process. And, it's spending time with people. That's what it takes sometimes, is spending time with people and giving them an education and understanding of where things are and a safe place where they feel comfortable to ask the kind of questions that they want answers to.
Okay. On the other hand, that's someone who really was left in a difficult financial position. But tell us about a widowed spouse who was left in a very solid financial position because of really good financial planning.
And I would say it's another case that we've had. And as I mentioned before, we require both spouses to be at the meetings. So it's very, very important. Even if one spouse is not interested, that sort of thing, we've sent people home and we make it very clear in our paperwork and our emails that both spouses need to be present. Mm-hmm. If they can't, then we'll reschedule the meeting. We've had people where they said, my spouse doesn't want to come. I'm sorry. We won't work with that. I have a fiduciary responsibility, and it's really in everybody's best interest for both people to be there. And as I just mentioned, if I'm working with a couple, chances are if they hire me, I'm going to be working with that wife longer than I'm going to be working with that husband, just because women are living longer. Yeah. So that wife is going to be my client longer than the husband will be. So it's really doing a disservice if you're not including both people. And in this case, the wife actually was begrudgingly, didn't want to come, was bored, didn't understand it, but felt comfortable asking questions. And over time, certainly didn't become an expert, but understood, the relationship, felt comfortable with me and my team. And so when her husband, eventually did pass away, we were able to continue working with her. And although it was obviously a trying time, there was one less thing that she had to worry about. And we were there for her as she needed us and guiding her through that process. And it went a lot smoother. Had she not gone through this process, she probably would have ended up much like the other person that I just described before.
Well, you may be finding yourself in a similar situation like this. Maybe you have a spouse who is in very poor health, or maybe you have a spouse who just passed away and you need to talk to a professional about your financial situation, about how to get all your ducks in a row and get everything in order. You can get a 15 to 20-minute introductory phone call with Mark Silverman with no cost and no obligation whatsoever. Mark, what do you cover during those phone conversations?
Well, we'll cover any questions that you have. We'll certainly talk about our planning process, which we call the True Wealth Financial Life Planning process. We'll describe what's involved in that. We'll get some information from you about your situation, what your needs are, what it is that you're looking for. Again, happy to answer any questions about me or my firm, and then determine if it makes sense to move forward. And if it does, we'll get you in the office for what we call a Get Acquainted meeting, which will get further into the weeds and further in depth to go through that process to make sure that we're a good fit for one another.
You've been listening to the Saving with Silverman podcast. If you have any questions at all about your financial situation, please give Mark Silverman a call. Again, his number is 520-333-7601, or go online to savingwithsilverman.com. For Mark Silverman, I'm Ron Stutz. We'll see you next time on the Saving with Silverman podcast.
The Saving with Silverman podcast is brought to you by Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC, based in Tucson, Arizona. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and everywhere you listen to shows. Subscribe to the show on your favorite app today and never miss an episode. Just search for Saving with Silverman to find us, or visit savingwithsilverman.com to listen to past episodes, to contact Mark, and to learn more about how to make smarter decisions with your money. All matters discussed on this show are for informational purposes only. Opinions expressed are solely those of Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC, and staff. All topics covered are believed to be from reliable sources. However, Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC makes no representation as to its accuracy or completeness. This show shall in no way be construed as a solicitation to sell securities or investment advisory services to residents of any state other than Arizona or where otherwise permitted. Topics should be discussed with your individual advisor prior to implementation. Fee-based financial planning and investment advisory services offered through Silverman & Associates Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Arizona. Insurance products and services are offered through Silverman & Associates, an affiliated company.